This is the first in a series of tutorials on how to create a music video. I'm assuming that you already have your audio track recorded from other software that you may have. Whatever means you use to create your audio track, that's already been done, and now we're going to work on a video. So this particular tutorial is going to be focused towards the titling, and then we're going to go, once we've created a title, then we're going to go in and actually do the video editing portion of it, where you add in the audio and all of that. Blender can be very intimidating, but if you take it in small bites, it's not that bad. There's a lot to learn. I've been using it for years, and I'm still learning every day. So just by way of quick explanation here, a couple of keys that you need to know, hotkeys, is the N key, which turns off the properties panel. So if you look at there, N turns it on and off. Okay. You can accomplish the same thing using that little button there, and you can also grab it and pull it closed. So either way, it works. The T on your keyboard will do the same thing for the tools panel. I'm not going to go into what all the tools do at this point, because there's just so much to cover. I would say it's good to set your render engine to cycles, and if you have a good video card with GPU, try that. It's about 8 times faster on the rendering. And then you'll want to save your work regularly, so you can do file save. And I have a Blender file directory that I use. You can put it wherever you want, just so you know where it is and you can find it later. So we'll just call music video tutorial. And now save your work regularly, because sometimes Blender will crash. I don't know what system you're using, what its capabilities are, etc. All right, so everything that you can do with hotkeys can be done from these menu items. So let's look at the view. You've got whatever object, you can make it behave as though it's the camera. If you want to go to the view of the camera, you hit numpad 0 and it'll take you there, or you can come into this menu system and select that. All right, and now you also have left, right, back, front, bottom, top. You're in a 3D environment here. Z-axis is, you can see the little arrows down here. Z is straight up and down. Y is front to back. X is left to right. And that's the way it's set up default in Blender. So you're in a 3D space. This plane represents the center of the 3D world, and where these colored lines cross is the exact center. 0x, 0y, and 0z. Okay, so we want to go to the front here. You can do this from you can do it from the top, the front, the back. It really doesn't matter. I like to use the front. So we're going to go to the front view, and it's 1 on the numpad or from the options. Now we're looking straight on, and we want to have an orthographic view, so there's no perspective at all. So let's go to ortho. If you go to your view menu here, perspective ortho right here is numpad 5. So you can hit 5 on the numpad, or you can click there. Now there's no perspective lines at all. Now we want the camera to see what we're seeing. So we can go to view, align view to active. Okay, so align active camera to view. So whatever we're seeing, the active camera is going to look at it the same as where we're sitting. There it is. Okay, so save your work. Every time you make a major change, save your work. We don't need the cube. We can put it on one of several layers, or we can just get rid of it. You can hit X on your keyboard or delete on your keyboard, It'll bring up a confirmation, just say delete. Now we need to put our text in the scene. It's going to come into the scene wherever the cursor is. So you can hit Shift C and center the cursor, or you can hit N and set the cursor right here, location of the cursor. See that? We can just set all those to 0, and the cursor is dead center. You can also hit Shift C and do the same thing. Okay, now we add the text. So we can go to Add Menu and choose Text, or we can hit Shift A. We get the same Add Menu and choose Text. We need to rotate it on the X-axis because it's laying down right now. So to stand it up, you can hit RX and type 90. You could also have gone over here and changed this value to 90 just by clicking and typing in 90. Okay, now we want to edit. So we've got two options. We can go here to Object Mode or Edit Mode, and more options will be here depending on what you have selected. Text has just got two options. I like to use the Edit Mode. If you don't have pie menus, it will just toggle back and forth when you hit Tab on your keyboard. If you want pie menus, you can go to File, User Preferences, go to Add-ons tab and type PIE, and make sure you have a check mark next to the pie, and then Save User Settings. Okay, so now we're going to go to Edit Mode, and we're just going to call this First Flight. And then back into Object Mode, and let's center this on our scene. And that's probably good enough right there, just doing it by eye. Okay, so you have this panel that's open here. This is the outliner. This is where you can select different objects from a list, or you can select them out here with a right click in the real world or the 3D world. You also have a scrollable set of tabs. This is the render tab. This is where you set your frame rate. I like to use 25. Because it's an easy number to do the math. 4 seconds is 100 frames, that kind of thing. This is your resolution. They have presets. You can set it to whatever resolution you want. It's the shape of the product that you're coming up with. This is where you set the length of your video. You can set it right here as well. A 3-minute video is going to be about 8,000 frames long. So when you load your audio track in, you'll know how long to set that. This also has got a lot of other options. I won't go to them unless we need to accomplish what we're doing here. I want to draw your attention to this F. That's your text. So this has all the properties and options for the text that you're viewing over here. I'm going to middle click on the scroll wheel and just turn the scene a little bit by moving the mouse. I want to show you what happens here. If you do depth for bevel, it creates a bevel on the text, which looks real nice. If you hit extrude, it does that. And if you hit offset, it offsets, and you can get some pretty bizarre looking things. There's a thing called shape keys if you wanted to make like an abstract intro down into the, so you could animate that movement that you're seeing me do there with that. Okay, so for right now, we just want this to be 0. All right, so keyframes, simply put, it takes a snapshot of the settings for the frame you're at in the video. So if you're at frame 1 and you hit a keyframe command, it'll put a keyframe there for whatever you have selected and whatever option that you want to actually keyframe. You can keyframe anything in Blender that has the ability, and anything like this, if you right click, you'll see there's an option to insert a keyframe. You can also hover and just say extrude. If you hit the letter I, it will turn that on and off. Alt I will get rid of the keyframe. So you can keyframe, and that's the heart of animation. So let's go to the camera view, 0 on the numpad. We want to move this back in the scene. So we can go to the location and take the Y and move it in the Y direction until it's small. Okay, now we can keyframe that by hovering and saying I. Now we have keyframes. And now we want to extrude this out to say the game plan here is to extrude it out till it's right up close to the camera, and then bring the back of the text forward so that the text stays up in front of the camera, but it gets shorter on the extrusion. So you'll see the effect as we go through this. So let's go to about frame, let's say 100. Now we're going to hit we're going to go back here first, frame 1, and we're going to insert a keyframe for the extrusion. Okay, so we have 0, but let's extrude it just a little bit, and then we'll replace that keyframe with the I key again. You can also, again, replace keyframe. Now we're going to go to 100, and we're going to extrude that out until it's up close to the camera and centered. So just keep using that mouse wheel. You can type it in, whatever you want to do. You can type that value and bring it up to where you want it to be at frame 100, and then hit replace keyframes or insert keyframe. Now if you look so far, the text will come towards us. See that? Okay, now we have a positional thing. Because the lettering is extruding, if you zoom out, you can see that it's extruding in 2 directions, forward and backwards. Okay, we want the back to stay. We want its position in the world to stay where it is until it's time to come forward in the scene. So we're going to go to the keyframe 100, and we're going to go 1 frame back to 99, and we're going to keyframe the location. So insert keyframe. Now it will stay where it is until it gets to 99, and then it will start moving the location. So what we do now is we go back to the camera view, and we're going to go, say, another equal amount of distance. Let's go to 190. We can get down to 190. Now we're going to change the extrusion by just lowering this down, and we're going to take it back to some value that we think is good. And I would say somewhere near 0 is fine. We want some extrusion on it. Let's go with that for now. So at frame 190, it's going to go back to that. Now we need to bring the whole thing forward to where it was here. So to do that, we're going to make a measurement here, and I'm just going to count from the camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5 units. So let's go to this keyframe. Now the text is short again. Let's bring the front to 7.5 units from the camera. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. So right about there. Let's count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. Now let's look at from the camera view, and there it is. I think it's extruded still a little too much, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust that. I want it to be not quite so much. And then I'm going to replace that keyframe. Now we're going to go back and go forward with this thing again till we're at 7.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. Now let's go ahead and do that keyframe. So let's watch from the side view just for giggles and see what it does. Okay, so it's extending out. Now it's starting to move forward at the same time it gets smaller, and it's staying at 7.5. So from the camera angle, here's what we have. Alt-A will play, or you can use the playheads. From the front, it comes up, gets full size, and then it starts shrinking. Okay. Now if I didn't want the movement, I could fine-tune that location and get it exactly. But this is good enough for what the principle is. I could have used some sort of a marker, or I could do a keyframe, take a measurement. There's all kinds of ways you can do it, but for what I'm doing, that's good enough. Okay, so we've created the text. Now, what I want to do now is get up here to, let's go to the next keyframe, next one. And now I want to add a material. Okay, so this is going to get a little involved, but if you go over here, this says type of active data to display and edit. It says material, so that's the material tab. Now there's nothing applied, it's just default object. Now we'll go to new, and we'll give it a name, title. Now if you go down here, you've got material. You can render the material so it's white. Now if I change it to red, it changes to red. You can also go right here and choose rendered, or you can hit Shift Z and you can see that it's red. Okay, and this is what it's going to look like when you actually get it rendered out and into the video. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the compositing tab, and we're going to click on the materials button again. It's the same as the one over here, and you can see there's our red material. And I don't really want red, so I'm going to go with more of a, maybe a deep blue. Okay, now we're using a node system here. If you notice here, it says use nodes or don't use nodes. We want to use nodes. Cycles that's what it's based on. So we're going to add two different kinds of materials applied to this. And we could do it by adding more materials here and defining what areas is going to be what color. That's the complicated way. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go Shift A, or we can use the add. We're going to do a shader. And in this case, we want a mix shader. So we find the mix shader here, drag it to that noodle coming across the connector. Now that inserts it. Okay, now we can create another shader, or you can duplicate this one, but Shift A or the add menu. So Shift A, and then we want a diffuse shader, and connect it to the bottom slot. Now if we go into the rendered mode here, we can see that it's a blend of the two. You can go between this one and that one. Okay, so let's do a brownish color here. Now we can go between the two. Alright, so there's a node called the layer weight, and I'll add that. Shift A or add here. Shift A, and then we want to input from the layer weight. It has two options, facing and Fresnel, I guess it's pronounced. Facing. Now you see we got blue letters because they're facing us, but we have red on the back. If you want to change the way that is, you just change. So it's up to you which one you want. Okay. I like the blue with the red in the back. You can get fancier yet. If you wanted to make a texture to this, you can Shift A or the add button and go down to texture, and let's just choose noise. Now let's choose Voronoi, however you would pronounce it. And we're just going to take the color and put it into displacement. Okay, now what we want to do is add a math node. So Shift A, or the add in the menu system here, Shift A, converter, math. Set it to multiply. Now, as you increase this value, you can see there's starting to be some texturing here. So let's scale this up to a higher resolution. You can see it's starting to be much more texture. Okay, and now we can make it not so strong by just lowering the multiplication value. And you can apply any kind of a texture that you want to apply. And if you notice, it's changing the way the colors appear. So let's do 0.3 just to give it a very slight texture. And we can always make it tighter, bigger. So it depends on what a person wants to have as far as the look. I kind of like that look there. Okay, now let's hit 0 so we got the camera, and that's what it's going to look like. But if you notice, we got a gray background. We want this to be transparent because we're going to overlay it over a color or a video sequence. It's going to be overlaid. There has to be a transparency value. So if you go up here to the camera tab and go down to where it says film and check transparent, now we have that checkerboard showing. That means that's where the transparency is. So that'll be able to be overlaid. Okay, so now we're ready to render this. You want to use image files, and Ping has transparency, and that happens to be the default. So if you look at the output section, it'll tell you where you're going to put it. And I like to make a directory. So you can go, and I've got one made called renders. And I'm going to make a new directory in the renders tab, and I'm going to call it video tutorial. Video title. So that's where I'm going to render the title to. So I select that and accept. Now you can see it's going to put them all in there. I'm going to have 250 frames rendered into there. They're going to be individual images, and then we're going to compile those into a video in the next tutorial. So for right now, I'm going to start it rendering, and so you can see what it's doing. Here we go. We're going to use the animation button. Here comes the animation. You can see it's going to get closer and closer. It's also counting the frame numbers here. It tells you how long it's taking to do that. And we'll just let it continue to do that until it's done. And then I'll see you in the next tutorial, and we'll use the images that we just created and put the video together. So thanks for watching. Part 2 will be as soon as I can get it done. Thanks.